Secretary, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. We're having problems getting an appropriate quorum. Okay, very good.
I can't get used to it. It's still a little bit foreign to me.
Thank you for coming. The subcommittee will come to order. Good morning and welcome to today's hearing on the Department of Agriculture's fiscal year 2021 budget. I'm pleased to introduce our witness, Secretary Perdue. The Secretary and I have a decade-long relationship, and we share deep passion for our farming and our ranchers and our rural communities, and it's been a pleasure to work collaboratively with him over the last 3 years. I also want to welcome Dr. Rob Johansson, USDA's Chief Economist, and Ms. Erica Navarro, the Budget Officer, to the hearing. Thank you for coming today. Over the past few years, natural disasters, trade uncertainty, and increasing levels of farm debt and bankruptcies have led to increasing stress and anxiety in the agriculture community. And I want to thank the Secretary and all of USDA's employees who have helped our farmers navigate these very, very difficult and tough times. Despite the likelihood that these challenges will continue for some time, however, the administration has put forth a budget that appears to be grossly inadequate, as it has every year during its time in office. This year, USDA's budget request is $16.4 billion, which is a reduction of $3.5 billion, or 18%, in discretionary funding from the final fiscal year 2020 bill. I continue to believe that many of the proposals in the budget are bad for our farmers, bad for our rural communities, bad for our vulnerable populations, and quite honestly, should be dead on arrival. Any budget is a statement of values and priorities, and it's been clear for 3 years now that the administration wants to dismantle some critical programs. Fortunately, the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse. As in years past, we will not entertain the elimination of programs such as Food for Peace, McGovern-Dole, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, Summer EBT, and nearly all of the rural housing loan and grant programs. We'll also not entertain many of the proposed policy changes, especially those that which restrict SNAP benefits or overhaul crop insurance in our conservation programs. I was disappointed, but not entirely surprised to see the department is once again proposing the harvest box idea, under which SNAP recipients would get part of their benefits via a box of food rather than through SNAP monetary benefits. Sadly, this mirrors actions on the administrative side. When met with resistance during the 2018 Farm Bill debate on the able-bodied adults without dependents, broad-based categorical eligibility, and the standard utility and allowance proposals, the administration moved forward with executive rulemaking. I worry that these rules disproportionately impact working families with children trying to climb out of poverty. The U.S. Census Bureau reported that in 2017, SNAP lifted 3.4 million people, including 1.5 million children, out of poverty. The economy is still not working for everyone, and the administration should not make it worse by decimating one of the most effective safety net programs. Now, Mr. Secretary, yesterday, ahead of your testimony, I know it was late, and I trust that you may have seen it. Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro and I sent a letter to you on the Department of Agriculture programs and urge you to take some decisive actions to ensure program access. As you are very well aware, under the exigencies of the coronavirus, COVID-19, states and localities are beginning to employ social distancing strategies as a means of containing the virus. For some, this has meant temporary school closures. And that jeopardizes access to school meals for students, including the nearly 22 million children who rely on free and reduced school lunches. And while we applaud USDA's recent efforts to accommodate the schools in California and in Washington State, we believe that more can be done, such as waiving the congregate meal requirement for schools outside of area eligibility. And we feel like the Department of Agriculture should immediately start working with the Department of Education, if you have not already, to provide states with the resources and the guidance to develop plans that will detail how students will receive access to child nutrition programs before a school shuts down. Furthermore, with regard to SNAP, we'd like to urge you to immediately suspend any department rulemaking that would reduce benefits or affect program eligibility. Enacting changes at this time would really exacerbate the current economic anxiety, and it would unnecessarily increase the burden on the very people who need and will need this assistance. I believe that as considerations of a broader economic stimulus package progresses, and there is discussion about that, that we need to consider expanding the SNAP benefit, which we believe will be a vital anti-recession tool, just as it was included in the temporary benefit boost when we did the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act in 2009. We look forward to hearing your comments on that, and of course, in the very near future, getting some specifics as to how the department will work through these programs. I'm disappointed to see that rural broadband funding was cut in your budget by $350 million. It's a program with bipartisan and bicameral support. And as chairman, I've made rural development a priority. We know that access to adequate broadband is a key ingredient for success, and yet too many communities feel left behind, unable to connect their businesses, their families, and their schools to the modern world. In the coming weeks, several of the mission areas, including the Farm Production and Conservation, Rural Development, and Food and Nutrition Service, are coming to testify about their specific requests. We will dive deeper into that specific requests, and I pledge to do my very best to work with you and our Ranking Member Fortenberry and our subcommittee to develop a bill that addresses the needs of all of those who depend on USDA. Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you for being with us today, and I look forward to today's discussion. And I certainly want to let you know that this subcommittee and this Congress wants you and the department and all of us to do right and feed everybody. With that, Mr. I'd like to note that our distinguished ranking member, Mr. Fortenberry, is unable to join us this morning. He contacted me on yesterday and felt that it was appropriate for him to remain home for the time being, and he assured me that he would be well represented, and just like Hallmark, he cared enough to send the best. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Adderholt, the former chairman of this subcommittee, for his opening remarks.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Adderhope?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's good to be here. I regret Ranking Member Fortenberry is not feeling well, but we wish him the best. Sorry I was a little bit late. I was actually in a briefing with former, all of our friend, former FDA Commissioner Gottlieb was given a briefing on the topic of the day, the coronavirus, and so I was trying to get a little bit of an update from him, so I apologize for coming in late. But I'm glad to be here this morning, and glad to be here on with the Secretary, with Ms. Navarro and Dr. Johansson. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for the job that you're all doing at USDA. And you all know firsthand how important agriculture is to my state of Alabama, where 1 in 5 jobs are related to either agriculture or forestry. And agriculture is not only a part of our past and our present, but it will be very much part of our future. That I can say that for all Americans. Before we dive into the budget request, I want to commend you, Secretary Perdue, and for your leadership and achievements over the past 3 years. I was just thinking it's hard to believe it's been 3 years that you've been on the job. I remember when you first started on the job, and it's amazing how time quickly flies. But due to your department's efforts across the vast responsibilities that you have at USDA and all your employees have, you've touched the lives of hundreds of millions of people in the U.S. and abroad in one way or the other. In particular, I want to express my appreciation for what you and your staff have done and will continue to do on building infrastructure in rural economies across this nation. You, of course, traveled to the district that I represent last year, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to travel to Northwest Alabama. But your staff traveled to the district I represent just the end of last year and awarded a loan and a grant as part of a first round of the Reconnect program. And this funding will support actually 8,000 rural households. It will support 57 farms, 44 businesses, 17 educational facilities, 14 critical community facilities, and 3 healthcare facilities in rural Alabama. As USDA rolls out the second and the third round of this loan and grant program totaling $1.7 billion, the department will help to close the digital divide between the rural and non-rural communities across the country. I hope that we can continue to build upon this progress we have made to date with high-speed broadband infrastructure as well as other infrastructure needs such as the installment or repairing of drinking water and wastewater systems in our rural communities. On the matter of school nutrition, I do want to express my appreciation for your providing the flexibility. Just this morning, I was meeting with one of my constituents who was is a school nutrition worker, and I asked her particularly about the flexibility, and she was very pleased with that, and that's coming from the grassroots, someone who's in that on a day-by-day basis. So your most recent actions are consistent with the language that we have included in the appropriation bills and reports, and as you likely know, the local school districts are on the front lines, as I mentioned the lady I spoke to this morning, and they're making sure that our children get the wholesome meals they need, and that they reach out to many of us and ask for that flexibility, and I'm glad that we can work together and try to provide some flexibility. Because it's working according to the people who are on the ground. As it relates to the President's budget submission, I want to continue my support for the funding requests that will provide greater customer service to farmers and ranchers that are actually in the field, whether that be technology information needs, or requests for staff support recovery jump teams to assist producers affected by disasters. However, I do want to voice my concern over the major changes that are proposed to crop insurance and other safety net programs. Farmers continue to experience very challenging times in this day and age with decreasing crop prices and a number of natural disasters. So your support for American farmer and rancher is greatly appreciated. We look forward to working with you on this subcommittee as we try to look at a number of key funding decisions that are necessary to make sure that we have the strongest farm economy in the entire world. So I thank you. It's good to be back here today and to have you here before our committee, as well as you, Dr. Johansson, and Ms. Navarro. Thanks for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adderholt. Secretary Perdue, without objection, your entire written testimony will be included in the record. And I'll recognize you now for your statement, and then we will proceed with questions.
Thank you, Chairman Bishop and Congressman Adderholt. If Congressman Adderholt thinks 3 years travels fast, what does he think about 3 decades when our relationship began, Chairman, in the Georgia State Senate? So 30 years passes pretty quickly as well. But it's good to see you in this position, and we appreciate your service. And I did receive your letter. It's not in my prepared remarks, but I look forward to addressing those issues in the question and answer period of time over the waivers that we have authority to do and the need that we may need some help in that regard. You know, it may come as a surprise to the committee, but I actually sort of enjoy these kind of hearings because as a true believer in the 3 branches of government, I think this is the way representative government should work. You all have constituents that contact you all, and you expect to they expect answers, and we're the implementers of the policy that you create through laws and bills, and it's appropriate for us to be held accountable for how we're doing our job. So I look forward to the questions, actually. I will confess how, though, having been a governor and created budgets for the General Assembly, you do know that executive branch sometimes eliminates things that they know that the legislative branch, the keepers of the purse, will fulfill. And so I have been guilty of that myself, and I thought you're going to brag on us this year because I thought OMB and we had gotten a lot closer this year than we had been the last couple of years in that regard. But I know that there's some things of interest that we all will talk about today. But I think we in the farm community are glad to have 2019 in the books and behind us in the rearview mirror. Is a tough year. We all know that. But I want to tell you that the safety nets that you all create generally through the Farm Bill and the ad hoc disaster programs have benefited farmers and ranchers all across this country in a wonderful way, and they're very grateful for that in that way. I think, again, just those standing disaster programs provided $690 million in assistance, and then you all provided another $4.5 for ad hoc disaster and WIC Plus for 2018 and 2019 losses. And then we had the crop insurance indemnity program, which brought us to almost over $9 billion. And then the president, his direction, on top of the $12 billion from 2018 in trade assistance, it was $16 billion in farmers unfairly harmed by the retaliatory tariffs in that way as well. So, but in spite of that, as you all know, you're in a farming district, Chairman, and you know that farmers are resilient, and even in spite of 19 and hurricanes and all those things, they're optimists, and I'm grateful to them. We've got a great story in American agriculture to tell. They're the most resilient people that I've ever met. But as I said, we're glad 2019's in the books, and it's going to give us 2020's here, a new decade, a new reason for more optimism, and we are optimistic. In our Ag Outlook Forum, we talked about technologies and the things, an ag innovation agenda that we look forward to. We do believe that the new trade deals and strong consumer demand in the United States and abroad are a signal for brighter days ahead once we get past through this outbreak of coronavirus. Speaking of trade, obviously the Phase 1 agreement with China, the USMCA, Japan, the new deal with South Korea, in addition to many other specific commodity wins and what Ambassador Lighthizer calls singles for smaller deals in other countries, all will benefit, I think, from a demand perspective going forward. I think, obviously, the year-round E15 for domestic production of conventional ethanol will help as well. And then last week, you may be aware that we, as part of President Trump's key promise to promote biofuels, we announced again the Higher Blend Infrastructure Incentive Program. It's $100 million in grants to retailers to help provide more access to consumers. We believe when consumers have access, they're going to make a smart choice with a higher octane, better air quality, and lower price fueling. So you mentioned rural development. That's an important part. We've been working across the sector and rural development to increase rural prosperity. I think, again, as was mentioned by Congressman Adderholt, these Reconnect programs have been well received, as you know, in Georgia and many other states. We've gone, I think, we had applications from 38 states in the first round. We utilized those appropriations you gave us in a leverage kind of way to increase more than just a $600 million investment through 200 in grants, 200 in loan grant, and 200 in loans out there. We optimized that $600 million into more than that from an investment standpoint into broadband, which is absolutely, truly transformative. When you go to homes and farmsteads and kids that trying to do their homework and not even cell service to fiber to the home, then it's like it's just unbelievable, the transformation that can take place in that family. You talk about rural people, kids leaving the farm. This is going to help bright young people stay on the farm, whether they're having farming or jobs they can work for with connectivity in those farms. We're going to keep it will help to stop the brain drain in that way. So it was, by our count on the appropriations that you gave us in the first round, it's going to change the lives of 431,000 rural Americans, and we got a lot more to go. But we're beginning to tell the success story of American agriculture as well, because we think it's a good one. The miracle of American agriculture over the last 7,500 years has been amazing in feeding this country and the world to a large degree for several generations. I visited with Ms. Pingree earlier this morning about the Ag Innovation Agenda and her interest in some of those issues that will align with what we're talking about, best aligning our programs and research to provide farmers the tools they need to innovate and be successful in that way. So the kind of specific goals, we talked about a scoreboard. We're going to measure these sorts of things to increase production by reducing environmental footprint, production by 40% by cutting the footprint in half by 2050. Those are good reach goals, but we think we can get there based on the technology that's available to us. So as you know, our colleague and another member that we have 3 decades experience was very instrumental in our HBCU 1890 scholarship, and we are delighted to have those moving along, and that's going to provide scholarships at HBCU universities out here and really prepare kids for a great education and in these schools that will do better. So this is one of the reasons we're excited about the future in that regard. So while it's been an anxious but a productive year among nation's farmers, ranchers, and producers, I'm obviously here today to present the administration's budget for the department, and we're proud of the new loan program, $79 million to fully support the $8.9 billion demand for farm loans. You mentioned there's more demand here. Working capital is down over a period of years, and these loans, an estimated 35,000 farmers and ranchers will be helped. And I think that supports that foundational principle of access to wholesome and healthy foods. The good news also, it includes funding to fully support over 8,700 food safety inspection personnel who will ensure the safety of meat and poultry and egg products at over 6,400 processing, slaughter, and import establishments there. $200 million to reduce trade barriers that disadvantage ag exports, open new markets, $100 million to support grants and incentives to promote domestic ethanol and biodiesel, as we indicated. And we did put $250 in there, $250 million for a 4th round of Reconnect. I hope what we've demonstrated already, that as we continue to use the $1.1 billion that you all have done in 2 tranches, applications are opening now. They'll close March 16th, and we believe we'll be oversubscribed again for these rounds as well, and we're going to get those out as quickly as possible. We got the foundation of the application set up, And I think some of the flexibilities you all gave us in the census of where this underserved definition was will help us in going forward in that way. So that will also, the rural development will support billions of dollars for rural electric improvements, water, wastewater improvements, community facility loans, rural housing loans, and business and industry. So in the face of a growing debt, I think the president has done his best to offer a fiscally responsible budget that doesn't try to kick this can down the road, but we need to get a handle on it. And we've got a budget that we work with while we're executing fiscal constraint. Again, Mr. Chairman, along with your help, we're going to continue to do our level best to do right and feed everyone. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be in here today and look forward to your questions in an honest and transparent way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. And let me take this opportunity to thank you and all of the employees at USDA for the way that you have implemented the disaster relief package that the Congress passed. $3 billion for impacted communities that were affected by the natural disasters over the last couple of years, as well as the block grants. And in behalf of all of the impacted communities in Georgia and the impacted states and territories, I just want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for your efforts in that regard. Now I'd kind of like to get to the issue of the day, which is the coronavirus, COVID-19. Let me just read for you briefly a statement that went out from the Food Research and Action Center to its membership regarding the COVID-19 challenges. And I quote, "The COVID-19 virus that threatens negative impacts on public health and the American economy presents particular challenges for low-income people. Social distancing strategies reduce the chances of human-to-human contact. They could entail families stockpiling food and other supplies, sick workers without paid leave directed to stay home, and schools closing for periods of time. Administrators and legislators should consider, 1, adopting disaster SNAP and disaster provisions of other federal nutrition programs to provide nutrition resources for low-income consumers who lack resources to stockpile food and to make up for disrupted school meal service. And 2, suspending implementation of rules changes that weaken SNAP benefits and enrollment. And 3, increasing SNAP benefit amounts to bolster the program's countercyclical impacts." Now, obviously, we are all concerned about the ongoing coronavirus outbreak. Given how broadly USDA touches all Americans' lives, we want to make sure that you're prepared to respond to the outbreak and that you have adequate funding and legislative authority to take whatever steps that you deem necessary. Can you let us know what USDA has been doing in response to the outbreak and whether you anticipate any need for additional funds or authorities? And amid the outbreak, I'm glad that USDA approved the waivers from Washington and California to ensure that children can still receive school meals even if the school is closed. But it does seem that school closures will continue to tick up. Have any other states submitted similar waivers, and are you considering issuing a nationwide waiver?
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. I want to tell you this is a time we all need to pull together, put any kind of bipartisanship aside, and do what we need to do for our people. And I think that's your goal, and that's my goal as well at USDA. We did issue waivers both to the 2 states that you mentioned as well as Alaska. But even more than that, what we told people, statutorily, our legal counsel tells us that we have to be asked in that way. What we've done, because we have to be asked, is we've sent the message to all the states that they can preemptively assume a positive response once they ask and once the waiver request comes in. Certainly, when schools close, it doesn't make sense to have to go to the waiver or to congregate feeding areas because that's the purpose of closing schools. So we're waiving the congregate feeding activity, certainly in those low income areas. We do not believe we have the legal and statutory authority to do that in all areas of non-low income, and that's something we need to look at together. We're pretty sure we don't have to do that. While we would love to do that, 3 years from now, there'd be an OIG report saying we violated the law, and you know how that goes. So we're trying to do everything we can statutorily to do that. Back in the H1N1, you may remember, you were here, you may remember that you all authorized kind of a P-SNAP, which was a pandemic SNAP. Right. It was authorized for 1 year. I'm not sure it was ever really funded or utilized, but that may be something you may want to consider as we look at here now.
Let's look at that together. In my opening statement, I noted how worried I am of the SNAP rules disproportionately impacting the working poor. And the able-bodied adults without dependents rule is set to go into effect in 3 weeks. And it will take SNAP away from 700,000 people. And if those folks have to self-quarantine for 2 weeks, they won't meet the requirement of the 20 hours per week work. And they'll be required to produce documents to be excused from that'll be creating some pretty challenging administrative burdens. So to go forward with the rule administratively, it seems like, especially at this time, it was when we're talking about economic stimulus and relief, seems particularly cruel. Do you think it's a good idea to implement and to issue the final SNAP rules during this outbreak when so many people, especially the working poor, will need assistance?
Chairman, I think I've got some good news for that situation as well. There are long-standing SNAP regulations that call good cause, and states have the discretion to determine good cause. Obviously, if your job says you can't come to work or you're sick in that way, that good cause would eliminate the need for work requirements as under this rule. So that will be under the discretion of the states to determine that good cause. It's already there, and we wouldn't have to do anything different that way other than those folks that are impacted by the coronavirus, either through their jobs or their own health, would be fulfilling those work requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. My time has expired, so I will, at this time, be happy to recognize Mr. Molinar for such questions as he might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, good to see you again, and thank you for coming to Michigan recently, and we appreciated your visit and the work you're doing on some of the trade agreements and how that's opening up new markets for agriculture products. I wondered if we could just take a step back a minute. I know you're kind of focused on the upcoming budget, but if you had to look at sort of the bigger picture funding needs for agriculture, right, in the short term, as well as kind of the long-term priorities, are there things that are right at the top of your mind?
As I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, I feel like you all have done a great job with the Farm Bill, additional loan eligibility, loan volume, and loan sizes there for farmers, and many farmers that have never had to come to USDA, we see them now. You all have appropriated that. The farm safety net that you all created, I thought demonstrated this year in 2019 with a lot of weather challenges that it works. Both crop insurance, both indemnities, both the ad hoc disaster program, as well as the other safety nets in NRCS and FSA. So I think from that perspective, one of the things we talked about is the Reconnect program. I think that's the transformative types of thing in rural communities. We hope we've implemented that in a way that really would trust you all to allow us to continue and even more as we go forward in combining. I know that the President's budget has more money in FCC. We think in these rural areas what the difference that we're making is incredible. So I think from that perspective, obviously farmers have been mentioning another MFP payment. I'm telling them that the MFP was not a price support payment. It was a trade retaliation issue, and if trade picks up, and right now China is doing those things that seem to be getting prepared, but coronavirus has those actual trade disruptive. So if we see trade getting back and we don't see prices improving, that's an indication we got a supply-demand equivalence issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Just along the lines of trade, and you mentioned China and the Phase 1 agreement there, and of course, we were excited about, pork, soybeans, specialty crops like tart cherries, opportunities perhaps there with the coronavirus is. I wanted to specifically, and you and I talked briefly about the tart cherry situation with Turkey, and we appreciate you've been doing some help for our cherry growers, but is there more that can be done to assist in this area?
I think, again, your tart cherry people have been good customers of the Section 32 program, as you may know, over a number of years, and we are continuing to purchase tart cherries to pass along to food banks and other poor that need it in that way. Most of the challenge right now, I think, is coming from the turkey imports, and there's been some investigation of whether that could really rise to the level of a anti-dumping situation. That way, Congress makes that determination. I think the industry would have to bring those allegations, and it'd be investigated whether we could bring an action against Turkey for from dumping over less than the cost in that regard. That seems to be where most of the pressure is on the tart cherry growers.
Mm-hmm. And then on, the chairman had talked with you about coronavirus. One of the questions people have about our safety of our food supply, and do we have any information to believe that the coronavirus can survive in our food supply, or at least as it relates to meat and poultry plants?
I appreciate that question. Absolutely not. There's no evidence that it is a foodborne transmissible illness such as salmonella or E. coli, those sorts of things. That it really depends just on safe hygiene. You don't want to be eating with someone that sneezes on your chicken and you eat it, but nonetheless, it's not a foodborne illness as we would think of.
Okay. And then when Chairman Glenn Smith of the Farm Credit Administration appeared before the subcommittee last month, he noted that the farm credit system evaluates whether the lending institutions are serving all eligible borrowers, including young, beginning, and small farmers. What do you see as some of the greatest hurdles for a young or beginning farmer, and what can we do to assist?
I think there are two things you've already done. I think the CRP program that was in the Farm Bill this last one helps young farmers. There have been a lot of complaints about the richness of the program. People were using it as a retirement, taking land out of production where it was not available to young farmers. This, what you all did there, helps in that regard. And also, the loan guarantee program that you do there, helping us to work with the Farm Credit System community banks in a guarantee basis. They provide the boots on the ground, traditional banking underwriting for knowing that customer, and the USDA through your appropriations provides the funding on a 90-10 basis, and that's a great program. We expect to see more of those guaranteed loans moving forward. It's a great public-private partnership that works using the resources you appropriate and leveraging that amount through the private sector and them doing the underwriting.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molinar. At this time, I'm pleased to recognize, the gentlelady, Ms. Pingree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. I feel very privileged. I've been able to see you at the Agriculture Committee, meet with you in my office, and see you again here. It's kind of like all Secretary Perdue all the time. It's great. And I love the opportunity to talk about these issues with you, so thank you and to your team for being with us today. First, I need to ask the chair, Representative McCollum was not able to be in the committee today, and she asked me to submit this question for the record.
Without objection, it is submitted.
I didn't think you'd object. So just a little bit more, you've given us a lot of background on the coronavirus and school meals, and obviously you're hearing a lot about that because it's a big area of concern, and I can tell that the department's been thinking that through. So I just want to follow up on a couple of questions. I guess what you were saying earlier was on the waiver, you can't sort of agree to take in all the waivers. You've just said to people generally, we're likely to approve it, submit your request to us.
Yes, the way we understand the statute, we have to be asked. What we are saying there is if you ask, we're going to say yes on the waiver to congregate feeding. So that's the opportunity there. We're essentially saying we just have to fulfill the statute by being asked, but the answer is yes.
And how many requests, I know you said there were 3 that you've granted, which is great, thank you for working on those, but how many requests do you have in right now?
I think we have some from Utah. They're kind of coming in as they go. And this, again, is a waiver for when schools are closed over the waiver is actually for a requirement when typically you have to have congregate feeding, which defeats the purpose of social distancing in the coronavirus. That's what we're actually waiving. So we've done California, Washington, Alaska, and I think we have some requests in from Utah now. There may be more this morning. I haven't checked.
Yeah, I think Maine is either requested or requesting, although we've been fortunate, haven't had as much of a challenge yet.
Right.
I mean, one question I had was if there's a presidential declaration of an emergency, do you still have to go through the waiver request?
We do.
You do. And I guess another concern that you addressed briefly was on the districts that don't qualify 50% of free and reduced lunch. So you may have a district that overall is, not meeting the target, but has pockets of schools.
That's right.
Do you need some authority from us? What were you saying on that?
Well, it would be helpful to have blanket authority, but what we're doing, like the summer feeding program, there's an open in a low-income area. There's an open where everybody can come, and there are also closed systems where the groups know the students who are eligible to do that, and they come. Take for instance, in a non-low income, you've got some low-income students there. So they're eligible, they just have to come and identify themselves, and they have be able to fit as well. In a low-income area, an open congregate area there where they come and pick up food, anyone can come in that area and do that.
Got it. Well,
It's a little awkward by the low income and others, but that's the way the statute does. And if we had more flexibility, we could be more open in the others.
I'm sure that you'd receive all the support you wanted from this committee and others who are concerned about it. You also mentioned the PSNAP program, which has not apparently been used much. Are there barriers right now to that being implemented? That seems like it was kind of tailor-made for what we're going through now, and
it has expired. It would require a reauthorization. It had expired. I think it was a year.
Got it.
That way.
Okay. We're all kind of trying to think ahead about what has happened, what the challenges are, but what are you worried about at the USDA about the impacts of coronavirus and things that we may not be even considering yet?
I think internally and externally, we got over 100,000 people scattered around the country, and others. We had some requests for teleworking in Seattle, which we granted. We had some in a Forest Service. It was 50 miles away with no outbreak, and we said just sit back and relax a little bit. But we've issued guidance to our employees on the internal side about just, first of all the basic kind of things of what to do. We are refreshing, obviously, our pandemic plan. We are testing our systems over telecommuting to see the stress testing them to see if they're up to speed. Our IT person feels that they are, but we want to check those out to make sure if we have to utilize those. That's internally operation because we as you all know, we got a lot of people depend on USDA on a daily basis, from farmers and ranchers to consumers out here, and we have to carry on the work. So it's mostly being prepared. Our motto is be prepared, not panicked, and doing that, and that's what we're trying to do ahead of time. You always want to ask yourself, is there something we could have, should have, ought to done that we would have looked at in the last part, and that's really where we've been in all the guidance and recommendations to our internal team. Certainly, trade is one of those components people ask a lot about. What about the China Phase 1 deal? We understand just from a physicality standpoint of people getting to work, this may be influenced some, but the good news is from China, they are still doing many of those non-tariff trade barrier types of things. They're dissolving those and resolving those point by point, indicating to us there was full intention to try to fulfill the hard number commitment they made. And that's going very, very well in spite of the coronavirus.
That's great. Well, I'm out of time, but thank you so much for your answers. Appreciate that.
Dr. Harris.
Thank you very much, and good to see you again, Mr. Secretary. You know, the competition is intense this morning. We have CDC a couple doors down, and they got a little problem on their hands. Anyway, let me first talk to you about a very important issue for my district, which is the USDA inspection for catfish. Now, as you can appreciate, not all catfish is the same. In the Chesapeake Bay, we have the blue catfish, which is an invasive species. And just 2 days ago, I'm told tales of, people catching these 60-pound catfish that are basically eating things that are native to the Chesapeake Bay, to the point where, we've spent a lot of federal dollars to build up our bluefish population, our crab population, and this could all be for naught because of the blue catfish. Now, blue catfish tastes good, I'm told. The trouble is that, as you know, in 2017 they moved the inspection of catfish processing from FDA to USDA, and the current USD regulations are just too onerous for our watermen to make a profit catching these invasive species. So the invasive species just keep on going on. Instead of what would make a great idea, which is, oh yeah, let's actually harvest them and kill two birds with one stone. We produce a product, American-made product, and by the way, we take care of this invasive species. So, I'm going to ask you, could the department, for instance, under their rules and regulatory scheme, exclude invasive species from the more onerous requirements of catfish processing regulation?
I'm not aware that we could if they're used as a food source. Obviously, we take food safety very, very seriously, and if they are being consumed like pork and beef and chicken, I don't know that we could do that legally in that way. I'm more interested in really the onerous part of what you're saying of why the watermen are feel like it's overbearing in that way, and let's resolve that issue first.
Sure. No, Mr. Secretary, it's simple. You require an inspector there at all times when these boats come in, and you know the way watermen work. Sometimes they'll go out, they'll come in the evening. You can't have an inspector there right at that moment. So hopefully we can work together and maybe eliminate that, because this is a huge problem for the Chesapeake Bay. We have 2 bills before the Maryland legislature, asking Congress to please, provide some relief because these are invasive species. So I appreciate working with you on it. Just a couple of other things in my limited time. I think that you're doing the right thing when you're looking at work requirements for able-bodied adults under the SNAP program. I know that the department's coming under a lot of criticism for looking at that policy or toward that policy, but I just think it's the right thing to do. I think that my constituents believe that we are a generous nation. We do have a safety net, but this actually helps people out of the safety net while providing them, obviously while providing them support during that. The other thing that I'm very interested in, but I don't think we're going to get off the ground, although we should, is the Harvest Box program. Because I think, the trend in America right now, and I know because my daughters do it, is, you either have home delivery or easy pickup of groceries, and to blend that with the availability or providing more availability of nutritious products in food deserts, this all comes together as you now encourage private vendors to create these market boxes and actually deliver them to places where you would have no access to healthy food. So I think, again, that's a project that I've certainly advocated for, and that I hope you can, we can move somewhere along those lines, because I actually think it greatly improves. It's a win-win. It's win-win for our farms. It's a win for those areas, especially the food deserts, where we would be getting food there. We potentially could get nutritious food there where it's very difficult to get food. Finally, one thing is that, and again, as we're talking, we're at CDC for people over there 2 doors down, but that COVID-19 problem arose from animals. I mean, that's a transmission from animals sold in a market to humans. We don't have the equivalent here in terms as a focus on how we control diseases. And now that we appreciate that a lot of these novel viruses are going to be mutations from with a reservoir in an animal source, do we need an entity that thinks about this, that spends all its time thinking about this, like we have the CDC thinking about it for humans, how to prevent transmission human to human? How do we control these kind of diseases in the animal population?
It's a great question. Obviously, that's really what our whole purpose of our food safety inspection system is all about. If you wanted to create a market out here and just sell bats, that's not appropriate, and you would be you'd be stopped from that. And that's the good news about really the protein aspect. FDA does on the vegetables and other eggs and things like that. We create the protein in the food safety inspection service, and certainly vigilance from a research perspective over the zoonotic diseases is very, very important in that regard. If I could go back to a couple of things you mentioned, what we tested in Texas for rural areas delivery of food that way, and it worked very, very well. I think if we could be permitted to do something on a choice basis to allow half of those food stamps to be delivered to people, I believe there'd be more assumption in limited pilot projects over choice. If we gave people the choice, not mandated, but gave the choice, I think we would see a lot of uptake there. The other thing over the ENT and the ABOD rules, I wish you all could have gone with me to Baltimore the other day to an education and training facility. It was just the most amazing thing. These were machinists. They were teaching unemployed people how to code these machines there in welding techniques. We had employers, we had participants, we had training. It was JARC, and we're trying to replicate that system out here. We've got an obligation to help people move that have not been employed to move out, not just cut them off, but our goal is to help move them to sustainability.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Cuellar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate what you and your men and women do for the country, and certainly what y'all do in Texas. Want to ask you a couple of questions that we've added in the appropriations bill. One is Section 741 that deals with what we call the 10-20-30 program. That is 10% of the funding from, and there's a list of programs will go to areas that have had 20% of its population at the poverty level for the last 30 years, something Clyburn and some of us have been working on. My concern is I've asked some of the folks in Texas, and they're not familiar with the 10-20-30 program. This is not a rider, it's actually a section, it's a bill. So I would ask you all to please have your folks make sure they comply with this part, because I did ask some of my Texas folks, and they had no idea about the 10-20-30 program, which is one. Second, another rider that we added has to do with SNAP, the SNAP program, and how they can, how the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Education, you all can work together to provide outreach for eligible college students. So I want to see what sort of plan on the rider that I added, see what plan you all can do with the Department of Education to reach out more to the college students to get that type of assistance, and of course the 10-20 program. And then finally, actually I was going to ask two, but I'll ask one more. Fever ticks. Through the help of the chairman and the ranking member, I've been able to add money for fever ticks. And in Texas, as you know, and I've been there with prior secretaries, and I've been with them as we dip the cattle, the quarantine has not gone smaller. What worries me, the quarantine area has grown, and as you know, the cattle industry in Texas and other parts is very important. If this will continue to spread, it would cause a great damage to our cattle industry. So one is the 10-20-30 program. Two is how we can work, you all can help us with college students so they can be eligible, do outreach, and of course the fever tick situation. And again, I appreciate you got some real good folks down there in Texas, and I appreciate the good work that they do.
Thank you, Congressman, and before I say anything, congratulations. With the 10-20-30 program is a common program in rural development, and it may not go by that name, but obviously a 10% set aside for poverty area, high poverty areas that have been there for 20% poverty for 30 years. That's the 10-20-30 program that came. And so that's fundamental in our rural development program. If your folks are not aware of it or don't feel like we're in compliance there, then we want to hear about that, because that's pretty standard operating procedure in rural development programs. And certainly from the food SNAP program for college students, we don't make a distinction whether they're in school or not. They come in, they're on their own that way, then they're eligible, they qualify, and we'll go forward in that way. You know, if they're working certainly and probably not making a wage that disqualifies them, then they're eligible to do that.
Right, and if y'all could, as per the writer, if y'all could just work with the Department of Education and just do that outreach, we would appreciate it. Yeah. And on the 1020 also, it's not only the rural development. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of programs there that, you know, I certainly want to make sure we work with y'all on that. Anything on fever ticks?
Yes, sir. I've been in the area and talked with ranchers, and much of the refuge down there mostly is Department of Interior land in that area with there. We've got a problem as a carriers of nilgai and deer as well, and many of the ranchers don't want to do the things that it takes down there to quarantine their animals in that way. But we're working with them. I met with them down there and felt like we've got are making progress on it in that way. It's an important thing, and I think we've got it stopped. We haven't eliminated it yet, and that's the goal. The challenge, obviously, is that many of the pests come across the border, and we're limited sometimes in the provisions that way.
And that's what I was going to ask you is the language that I've added was to work with the Mexican officials, because you do have wildlife that crosses, and we can't dip ourselves out of problems, out of this particular situation. Because it's not only the cattle, but it's the wildlife.
That's right.
On it. So, again, I appreciate you got some good folks. I would ask you to also look at your tick writers, because I've got a lot of comments from our folks that we need to have more of a presence there with the tick writers down there, what we call tick writers there. But anyway, you all do a good job. Appreciate it. Any way we can work together or try to get you extra resources, love to work with your office.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cuellar. Mr. Secretary, I'm concerned about how your relocation of ERS and NIFA is proceeding. As of the latest pay period, you were short a total of 429 employees in Kansas City out of your target of 576. That's about 75% short. Because this has been such a, for lack of a better word, a mess, you're backfilling ERS and NIFA in Washington with retired staff, contractors, temporary staff, cooperative agreements, and grants with universities and other groups. They are doing the work of the permanent staff who left in response to the move. We've received other information from USDA about the cost incurred in relation to the move that conflicts with what we were told when the move was being planned. By the way, we've asked questions about the cost of the backfilling, and we've still not received answers. Both agencies have hemorrhaged hundreds of years of institutional knowledge, and the cancellations or delays of future reports is inevitable. Last week, several of my House Agriculture Committee authorizing colleagues expressed concern about delays that we've been hearing about some NIFA awards, especially the 1890 scholarship program. The Farm Bill, which was passed over a year ago, and the funds still have not gone out the door. Timing is critical, and as we move later in the year, the scholarship funds not being delivered will impact the incoming class and the 1890's abilities to attract the best and the brightest minds. So I'm afraid that the example of the 1890 scholarship program delays is the first signal of an oncoming wave of program delays, missed deadlines, and report cancellations. I think you stated to Representative Alma Adams that you would specifically find out about the delay in delivering funding awards for the 1890 scholarship program. Can you share what you've learned since last week and why there's been a delay of over a year? And I had a meeting with a number of them last week also, who, when they found out that I would be entertaining you today, asked me to please inquire on that, and so I'd like to do that, please, sir.
Did you use the word entertaining?
I did, actually.
What I have learned since the question the other day is where are we on that? And certainly the 1890 program being a new program, some of the other delivery of money being obligated was obligated on time. The cycle of 1 and 2 year programs in NIFA obviously go over a cycle, and it goes all the way back to the shutdown of the there, putting us a month behind as we move forward. We're probably another month behind. We expect all these obligations to be out by March the 30th, and we prioritize the HBCU. They've been notified they are going to get the money, but like a lot of people, and they want to see it in hand, and we haven't dispersed it yet. But they can plan for these students. They can recruit these students coming in for the fall. It's when it was be implemented, and we've notified them of that.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, I'm sure that you are aware that these are some of the more delicate institutions, the HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, and being able to plan and to know exactly what cash they will have on hand will certainly is invaluable to them, and not being able to do that puts them in great jeopardy. One, of being able to assure students that they will be able to get in and have the resources they need, and two, in just keeping their doors open in many instances. So I would urge you, Mr. Secretary, to please, if to the extent that you can, try to expedite these funds, because they're really sweating bullets, and they really are concerned about having access to those dollars as soon as they can possibly get them.
Those were the direct instructions we gave to our folks this week.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. My time on this round is just about over, so at this point, let me recognize Mr. Molinar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I was hoping to follow up with you a little bit on the tart cherries issue. And, in the first round, we were discussing the pressure on the tart cherry industry, and it comes from what I consider unfair trade practices from Turkey. And my understanding is originally the International Trade Commission determined that countervailable subsidies are being provided to producers and exporters of dried tart cherries from Turkey. The preliminary determination was an estimated countervailable subsidy of 204.93%. The preliminary determination of the estimated dumping margin was up to 648%. Yet in January, the ITC determined that the tart cherry industry is not materially injured or threatened with material injury by reason of imports of dried cherries from Turkey. And with that subsidy rate and the dumping margin, it just seems to me that I don't understand how they came to that conclusion. But my understanding is the investigation is complete and completed with a surprising end. And I just wondered if there's anything we could do together to, help with these specialty crops that have been disproportionately affected by these foreign subsidies that the ITC has failed to take action on, and wondered if you'd also be open to coming to Michigan and maybe touring a cherry farm or other great specialty crop producers.
I was surprised as well, Congressman, and when we saw the initial percentages there, we thought we had a win, and then the final adjudication was not, and I didn't understand that. I think, again, from USDA, using the tools that we have on Section 32 is really what we have available there right now. We're open to other suggestions if you have, but as you well know, Michigan has a wide diversity of specialty crops, and in that way, we addressed really some of the sugar beet issues that were
Yes.
harmed this last year in that way, but many others. But yes, I would, we look forward to getting around and specifically these kind of areas or hosting them and telling us some of the challenges that they face. Certainly, they feel like they have done in this case what they needed to do. I don't know. I can't explain the outcome.
Okay, thank you. And the other area I wanted to just follow up with you on, we talked a little bit about the Reconnect Rural Broadband Program, and you know, I appreciate the work you're doing. I know you've been making this a top priority as you travel around the country. I'm just wondering what else the federal government can do to address this divide between rural and non-rural communities so that our rural communities are not left behind. I think the USDA is working on it, the federal FCC is working on it. Are there other things we could be doing to assist in this effort?
I think, again, all of us are working on accurate mapping, which I think what you all did in the flexibility on the latest rounds was we had been prohibited if 2 or 3 houses in a census tract were served, they were deemed unserved, or they were deemed to be served. You gave us a percentage of flexibility there. I think, again, from maybe more flexibility in the population there and some of the flexibility of what it really means on a location-by-location basis would help in that regard, as well as the funding continuing, because we think once we got the foundation of these awards, they're moving very well. Dealing with both telephone co-ops, electric co-ops, and the private sector, we've seen all of those come in. Even communities have come in. So I think if we just need to continue to do more of it, our goal is to get this $1.1 billion out as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Ms. Pingree?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take on a whole different topic. There's been a lot of attention to PFAS recently. I know my colleague from Michigan has got a lot of issues in that state, but we're hearing about it all over the country. And I want to talk a little bit about the impact on our farmers. Certainly, it's a tough time to be a dairy farmer, but even tougher when something like PFAS affects your farm, contamination. Interestingly, we really only know about 2 cases that we've heard a lot about, the one in New Mexico and then one in Maine. The New Mexico one is related to an Air Force base. The one in Maine is related to sewage treatment byproduct being placed on the land a long time ago. So it's a very complicated thing. Once there's PFAS contamination, it pretty much stops operations on your farm. It's very expensive to do the testing, which is the responsibility of the farmer, or often left up to the farmer. And once you have that contamination issue on your farm, it's very likely no one's going to buy your milk again. What our experience has been is that the Dairy Indemnity Payment Program does not work well for farmers that are impacted by PFAS. So I'm just curious if this is on your radar screen. Is the USDA taking a serious look at this? And how do we make sure there's a pathway to getting those farms back into production who have PFAS contamination?
Certainly, I know DOD is looking at the overall broader issue, but certainly as it affects dairy farms particularly. We've dealt specifically with this New Mexico larger dairy and have paid the monthly indemnity fee. You know, that doesn't account profitability. You still lose that. It reimburses for costs. But I think the good news is recently we're making some progress over FDA checking over once clean water, clean feed is able to be brought in to the cattle, then there is a cleansing there. The meat can then be utilized safely of the standards and the residue levels that they've talked about. The land then is definitely, I've recommended, and we're looking at just really purchasing those cows and relieving this person of having to milk those cows while you dump the milk as we go forward. It's a complicated effort in that way. We think we're close to resolving the New Mexico issue in that way.
Well, we'll follow up with you after the hearing. Our case is somewhat different in Maine. The New Mexico case in some ways was fortunate because it was next to a DOD facility. We don't have that same ability, but some of the things in the dairy indemnity program have not worked for our farmer, but we'll get the exact information to you. I know we've been trying to work with the department, but this case just hasn't been successful for a variety of reasons, but as you can imagine, it's a financial disaster.
I'm not as familiar with the main
understand.
issue. Most of the PFAS issue in New Mexico was water generated, water affected, not so much the land itself. So we'd be happy to take a look at Maine.
Great, that would be helpful. And just finally, I have a perpetual question on the origin of livestock final rule. I know the comment period on the proposed rule ended in December. It's something the organic industry has been waiting for a long time. So are we closer to getting it across the finish line? Do you have a timeline for sending the final rule to OMB?
On the origin rule, what we, it's just I don't want to confuse this, the country of origin.
No, the
label.
origin of livestock, the organic rule on origin of livestock, dairy calves in particular.
Yes, I think we are. I think the transition phase is really pretty close to going. I think it's, if not, it's already there. Over there was an issue over transition to organic standards, and I think the industry will be happy with the certainty that provides, not being able to go back and forth and you know, kind of once organic, always organic. In that way, I think the people who participate in organic standards, I think, will be pleased with the rules.
Great. Well, we are looking forward to seeing that rule and having a resolution on that. And with that, I yield back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pingree. Mr. Secretary, the Partnership for Public Service, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, issues annual rankings of the best places to work in the federal government using data from the Office of Personnel Management. And in 2017, when USDA became, quote, the most improved large agency, end of quote, by moving from 9th place to 7th place, you said that these rankings show that USDA is also a great place to work and is improving every day. For the last 2 years, however, USDA has ranked 16th and 17th, 16th out of 17 of the large agencies. Worse yet, out of 420 agency subcomponents that were ranked in 2019, USDA had 3 of the bottom 6. The Economic Research Service at 415, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at 418, and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture at 419. I think we both know why ERS, Civil Rights, and NIFA were ranked so low. With respect to the department's ranking, since you supported that finding in 2017, do you agree with the latest finding?
I think the data is the data. I don't, anecdotally, I don't get that sense as I move around, walk around USDA. I think, again, you've understood the NIFA ERS, and factually we've had some issues in Oscar as well that we're working hard to do. It's a very important part of USDA's programs, and I think we're on the right track in that regard. So as far as me being able to explain that, I can't. It doesn't match with what I sense and feel as we get around and talk to our people. While we're on that, I want to put in a good plug for the USDA personnel. This last year, 19, disaster, we had another MFP appropriation, implementing the Farm Bill, and frankly, with the really frustrating ability to hire people in this economy. And so the people that have been there have done more with less, and I appreciate that. Maybe that might have some influence on it, because there's been a lot of work to do the last couple of years over implementing the Farm Bill, as well as those disaster MFP payments and others, but they've, as well as the regular farm programs. They've done a wonderful job. I'm proud of them, and I hope to make them more proud of me.
We appreciate very much their hard work and your hard work in leading the department. Let me switch gears for a moment and talk about the Trade Market Facilitation Program. You've said on multiple occasions that you're telling farmers not to expect or anticipate a third round of market facilitation payments, and I think that's good advice. As optimistic as you and I and farmers may be now with the signing of the Phase 1 trade deal with China, the USMCA, and the other trade deals, I'm afraid that the initial retaliatory tariffs did permanent or at least long-term damage. Farmers and producers have received temporary government aid, but they lost stable and reliable markets that they had cultivated for years. So even as the first phase of the China trade deal goes into effect, it doesn't mean that the farmers are in the clear. Markets will be slow to return, and the bottom line is that the tariffs still are above pre-trade war levels. Last month, the Farm Credit Administration was up here, and they said that loan officers are working with farmers to diversify their portfolios to better handle these uncertain times. And this sadly includes recommending off-farm income. This is far from ideal. So again, as optimistic as we are about improving fortunes, what lasting damage should we expect to see? And do you think that the events of the last 3 years are likely to attract more people, particularly young people, into farming?
Chairman, I think when we will not be able to attract or retain young people in farming until we can provide them a profitability proposal out here that allows that economic sustainability to take place. We saw a lot of young people come into farming in those years of 2008 to 2013 that were kind of career highs of profitability from agriculture. I brought a chart here that I'm really stunned by, frankly, though, and I brought it just because I'm excited about it. I'm optimistic. You're optimistic, but farmers are also optimistic. This is the red line is their index of future expectations, and you can see it comes back to October 15. The blue line is the index of current conditions, and then future expectations. This obviously took place before the coronavirus, but farmers are optimistic out there. I think with these trade deals, we just need to make sure they come about. That's your question. I think the enforceability provisions on the Phase 1, there's a lot of demand out there. The good news is we see China taking action that can fulfill those numbers, notwithstanding the corona slowdown now.
Yeah, my concern is that in spite of that and the valiant efforts that both Congress, the agency, as well as some of our states like in Georgia have done to try to fortify the farmers that were suffering, particularly from the natural disasters, we're still seeing an enhanced, an astronomical number of bankruptcies, which means that many of our farmers will not be around to enjoy that rebound once relations with China get back to normal. So that's a concern. But at this time, let me recognize Mr. Molinar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, thank you for the update. And I similarly, Chairman Smith from the Farm Credit Administration appeared before the subcommittee last month and noted that the farm credit system remains financially strong overall, but that certain sectors of the farm economy are experiencing stress. And with respect to the coronavirus, I'm just wondering if, and maybe this is a question for Dr. Johansson, if you as a department have any insights on how your latest projections of growth might be, you know, with respect to trade and how that's all going to be affected by the coronavirus. Have you had a chance to do any modeling or any updated information based upon this new situation?
Well, thank you for the question, Congressman. Yes, we've been looking at different projections of global growth. More, I would say we'd focus more on the Chinese growth projections and how that might affect Phase 1, knowing that that would likely shift Phase 1 purchases further out into the year, just due to the fact, as the Secretary mentioned, while we can work forward on some of those agreements on SPS issues, the actual purchases with shipping being slowed down in ports and that kind of thing, we were likely to see those purchases shifted out further. More recently, we've turned our attention to thinking about If we see some more global economic conditions slow down in the first quarter here, or potentially in the second quarter, how that will affect demand for agricultural products. So yes, I think normally we would look and see how much purchasing power in emerging and developing economies, for example, would be reflecting changes in economic conditions. And it's likely that if there is a slowdown here in the first part of the year, I think most forecasts show a rebound in the later part of the year. So again, we haven't published any results, but we've been looking at that for sure.
And do you have any idea how, you know, obviously with the news of Italy kind of quarantining everyone, and how does that work for agriculture exports to Italy? How, you know, how does that affect things?
Yes, well, certainly we would like to be selling more products into all of Europe, and Italy included. Certainly when they have a quarantine as they've imposed over the last couple of days, that will affect trade in and out of Italy for sure. I don't have any numbers in terms of how much our actual exports are into Italy at this time. I think by and large, the Secretary mentioned our major trading partners, Japan, Mexico, Canada, and China are all being benefited by the agreements that we have in place. Of course, we're acknowledging the practical limitations of worrying about getting trade accelerated at a time when countries are focused more on their public safety issues. But I think that's a great question to look at, and we're certainly trying to bring our modeling up to speed to reflect different parts of the country that may be imposing different types of import and export restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
This time I'd like to yield to Mr. Pocan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. Apologize for not being here for the first part. We have CDC also, and these days more people are talking about coronavirus than agriculture, even in Wisconsin. So, but no disrespect. And I do want to say thank you very much for coming and visiting the facility on campus. You're a man of your word. You're the only person I think I've invited who's ever come to my district and followed up on something in my 7 years here. So thank you, and I really do appreciate that. And hopefully we'll figure out a way to get that building done. You know what I didn't tell you that day, and I should have, is they cleaned it up for you, so they swept up the cockroaches and everything else, and I told them they shouldn't have, because I wanted you to see it in its whole glory. But you came, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. A couple of questions. Let me start with market facilitation program. You know, we lost 10% of our dairy farmers in Wisconsin, and it's been really a tough hole. Some farmers got as little as $2 through this program, depending what they're growing. 2,600 farms got less than $1,000. The head of our farmers union in Wisconsin said if the true value what farmers lost, it didn't even make up the difference at all. So it was certainly something that allowed farmers to pay off some bills, but it didn't clear their debts. These payments were next to nothing. The question I have is, you know, it really didn't solve many of our farmers' problems. It was a very small amount to many. And then conversely, we found out that through the assistance program and through some purchases, $67 million went to JBS USA, a subsidiary of a Brazilian company. So a Brazilian company got $67 million. Wisconsin farmers in totality got $43 million, less than one Brazilian company. And then some farmers got as little as checks for $2. Can you help me figure out what we're able to do next to help out those farmers, especially as we still have some ongoing issues with China?
Certainly. Some of the, as you well know, the dairy issues have been under duress for a while. The 14 Farm Bill had hoped that it would serve dairy farmers better. It didn't. You all did correct that in the 18 Farm Bill. And the margin coverage program, I think, is going to be really helpful. We saw a good windfall last year in 19, so your dairy farmers that were still in business had a good year with the dairy margin coverage program last year in that way. The market facilitation program was an anti-trade tariff retaliation program, and the exports that were the damage that was done by that was the way that was calculated. Smaller dairies obviously was based on production. Smaller dairies would get less than those that were larger. It was never designed to make people whole, and we'd have needed a lot more billions of dollars to make dairy people whole over the last 5 years in that way. So that's where we were.
If I can, Mr. Secretary, just a question, because you brought it up, the margin protection program.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, for farmers in Wisconsin, they got about 20 cents per hundredweight of milk. If you're selling milk at $29 a hundredweight, and the break-even point is about $32, the amount was pretty small, actually, that dairy farmers got. And that's, I'm just trying to figure out, because that's the problem, because I agree, the trade assistance was more for my soy and corn folks, but still it was very, very small dollars. But even on the dairy side, it didn't provide very much when they're already underwater.
As I indicated, it was a trade damage program, not a price support program. So where dairies were under the economic duress of the previous 5 years and the indemnity, crop insurance indemnity, or the dairy program didn't perform as well as people had hoped under the 2014. I think you all have rectified that. If you look at the numbers from 2018 of the Wisconsin dairies that participated, and the amount of money they got from the dairy margin coverage program was vastly improved in that way.
Well, I would love to work with you more, because last year we actually hit our record of dairy farmers that closed down. We're #1 in the country for farm bankruptcies, and we lost 900 dairy farms last year alone. So it hasn't worked, and I guess that's what I'm trying to stress, is that as much as maybe from a DC numbers perspective it looked good, from a dairy farmer in Wisconsin perspective, it looks like bankruptcy. And that's the problem we're having. So we do need to do something else pretty quickly and substantially. I agree, there's some overproduction, there's some other issues absolutely out there, but if we keep losing at this rate, it's going to really have a devastating impact in places like Wisconsin. Just in the second I have left, biofuels, can I try to, I come late and I go long. Are we working with the EPA? I know it's the EPA program on the waivers, but obviously you know the impact it has on the ag community. Are you working with them to try to make it so that we can get rid of some of the waivers that were granted so we can get back to ethanol production?
We absolutely are hard in that way. The 10th decision, the 10th Circuit Court decision was a benefit there. We think that will reduce the amount of refinery waivers that are refineries that are eligible for the waivers, which has significantly reduced the number of gallons that are waived. It's been a real hardship on the ethanol industry and those producers.
Yeah, whatever we could do, I know would be much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Pocan. The gentlelady from California, Ms. Lee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I, too, apologize for being late, and hopefully my questions aren't redundant, but thank you so much for being here. A couple of things I wanted to ask you with regard, again, to COVID-19. One, in terms of food banks who are responding to this epidemic/pandemic, will they be reimbursed, especially the nonprofits, for helping deliver food to individuals who cannot, for obvious public health reasons, make it to food banks?
We provided funds, administrative and delivery and storage funds to them through the market facilitation program over the market acquired program that we were doing, the $1.2 billion, putting more $1.2 billion through the food banks. We did give them, I think, overall, I can't remember how many millions of dollars we increased that for the administrative costs, the logistics, and the storage and the warehousing in that regard.
Has that been since the public health emergency, or prior to that?
Prior to that, yes.
Prior to that, okay. So the need obviously now is greater, and the reimbursement rates and the level of reimbursements will probably increase. And so is there a way to make sure that, given this public health emergency?
I'm not aware that we have any authority or appropriation to do that. We use that through the market facilitation program to do that, but I'm not aware that we've got any direct type authorization or appropriation to do that.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, maybe we'll look at that and see if in fact the need warrants us to drill down a little bit, because this is going to be extremely important.
And many of these may be called upon to serve the food kids when schools close as well.
That's right. So thank you very much. Also, now considering that many low-wage workers are going to lose their hours due to cancellation of events, people choosing, for obvious reasons, again, public health reasons, not to eat out, and closure of office building, will you be calling on a suspension of the low-cost meal allowance nationally? People such as janitors, food service workers, parking attendants, ticket salespeople, you know, other people who depend on a minimum wage just to barely get by. They won't have sick time to cover lost wages.
I think we look forward, as we all heard yesterday, over a more broad economic stimulus package. We look forward to coordinating with you all in administration from the food perspective there, rather than going, I think there ought to be a one government approach. I'm not sure exactly all the plans for economic recovery in that way, but we know that food should be an important part of it.
Okay, we'd like to work with you on that. And also, we know this 3-month time limit, and to secure 20 hours a week, when in fact people are going to be harmed now, even more so by the 3-month time limit. How do you, I mean, are there waivers that you right now can grant with regard to this time limit?
There are. They're called good cause waivers, and the states have that discretion. Anytime there is an outbreak there, if a job they can't attend their job because of not going to work, or the company says don't come to work, or they have the illness themselves, the state can provide a good cause excuse where they do not have to fulfill that work requirement.
And do you approve those waivers, or does the state just automatically do it?
The states are already authorized to provide a good cause excuse to do that. That's not a waiver type of issue.
Okay. And then the other question has to do with school meals that are served outside of the system. How about a waiver? I think the provisions, well, first of all, is there a blanket waiver right now as it relates to the reduction of the price of meals and school waivers?
Not a blanket waiver, because our attorneys have indicated that statutorily we don't have the authority to issue a blanket waiver, but we have indicated to the states, if they ask, the answer will be yes. Our attorneys have told us we have to be asked. We can't voluntarily issue a blanket waiver, but if we are asked, the states have indicated the answer is yes, they will receive a waiver.
And then finally, let me ask you, the provisions of disaster SNAP versus pandemic SNAP.
Right.
Can you kind of describe what those differences are?
Yes.
And what that means in terms of funding from this committee?
Sure, to the best of my ability, the pandemic SNAP was something that Congress created during the H1N1 outbreak a few years ago. It was it expired after a year, and so it's no longer authorized under the PSNAP. I think we inadvertently left something up on a website that indicated that, but as of right now, there's not a PSNAP program because it was a program that was temporary and expired. There might be a need for something like that now. The DSNAP is a disaster program where it gives more availability when they're not able to get to grocery stores or food sources for cash assistance.
So is DSNAP authorized?
DSNAP is authorized in natural disasters.
And this would not be considered a natural disaster?
I don't think it would be. I'd have to consult again with our Office of General Counsel. I don't believe we have the statutory authority to declare a DSNAP. It has to be, I don't think the public health emergency qualifies for that.
Well, when you talk to your counsel, can you ask them, is it broad enough for us to include a public health emergency as part of this? Because if in fact the other is the pandemic SNAP is not authorized and we can't use that, right. DSNAP is only disaster related. We've got to find some way to have a public health emergency provision in one of these somehow.
Don't disagree.
Designate that.
Ms. Dillon, to you.
Yes.
you're suggesting that you need more authorization, you need more authority in order to do
Well, yes, sir, as I indicated earlier, the
public health SNAP.
The P-SNAP is not, it expired, so there's no authorization or appropriation for the P-SNAP. Funding is not necessarily an issue if we
Have authorization.
if we had authorization on the disaster type.
So we need to include that in whatever,
Yeah, that would be one of the possibilities.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I was asking in terms of this next bill that we put forward, would this be reasonable for us to look at to include in the next legislation as it relates to next steps?
That's one of the potential solutions, yes.
Okay.
We'd be happy to really work with you on technical assistance to see if there are better or different types of things that we can do, or go back to I'm not all that familiar with the provisions of the P-SNAP, but we'd be happy to work with you on a technical assistance basis.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Ms. Lee. Mr. Secretary, during your hearing last week with the House Agriculture Authorizer Committee, I was stunned to hear you say that you have had some funding issues with respect to the Farm Service Agency. If that is what you believe, it's never been reflected in a budget request from the department. FSA has never asked for more funds to hire up to whatever optimal staffing level that was believed to be needed. In fact, it was just the opposite. You're using attrition and streamlining efforts to justify hiring reductions. So is it your position that FSA's 2021 request of $1.1 billion is enough to fully fund an optimal workforce?
Yes, sir. I think the 21 budget request will fully fund FSA. When we started hiring up 2 years ago in that way, we did find a limitation over budget. So that's what we expect going forward. We think there's funding there now.
Last year, we provided $100 million more to FSA than was requested, but this year, the FSA request includes a reduction of $38 million, which is attributed to staff attrition and streamlining. Why would you not want to put these resources toward hiring new FSA staff, particularly since, for example, in Georgia, our customers are saying that they don't have enough staff, and that the staff that they have access to are not accessible enough.
Well, one of the things I mentioned earlier, Mr. Chairman, it has been exceedingly frustrating to be able to hire through OPM rules, and what we have to post these jobs nationwide, and we may get a job applicant from that qualifies from Utah that doesn't want to move to Georgia, or vice versa, and that's kind of what the limitation's been. We appreciate some of the temporary direct hiring authority, which we believe we will utilize in order to fulfill these these offices and the optimum office productivity guidelines that way. But it's been a challenge to hire people. I never thought we would see a time where it's challenging to hire people in the federal government. But people have choices today. The economy, they had a lot of choices, and many of them didn't want to move.
Do you have a hiring plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you provide that to us, and would you also provide the committee with the optimal number of FSA employees and what it will take to actually get there?
Certainly.
Now, let me turn to another perennial concern that we have. In October, the Office of Inspector General released a report on its review of the FNS Nutrition Assistance Program disaster funding in Puerto Rico following Hurricanes Irma and Maria. The IG found that what a lot of us already know, and that's that Puerto Rico does not have legislative authority to operate a disaster nutrition program, and as a result, essential disaster funding didn't get to the survivors until 6 months after the hurricanes. Further, the IG found that since Puerto Rico was unable to operate a disaster nutrition assistance program, it was unable to adequately plan for the hurricanes. Do you agree that Puerto Rico should be a part of the disaster SNAP program?
In answer to the question, obviously we know that Puerto Rico has a block grant, which should give the territory more flexibility in fulfilling their issues. I'm not sure that putting them under a traditional SNAP plan would help or hurt the territory. It looks like they would have more ability to serve their people through the block grant with limited rules and regulations in that way, rather than administering a traditional type of SNAP plan as other states must do.
The block grant, though, has a cap on it, and if the need exceeds the block grant, they're out of luck, and they've got people that will go unserved.
But you all were very generous, as you remember, to Puerto Rico in extending that beyond that time period, and it was, I'm not sure that the issue of serving people was limited to funding.
And I do understand that, but it seems cumbersome to have to wait until a disaster occurs and for Congress to have to pass a special bill for Puerto Rico if there were already in place the provisions for that.
But they get a block grant routinely, and you enhance that with DSNAP and others in that way. As I said, and we, you know, Mr. Chairman, we're limited in the way of states administer this program. That's one of the issues. You all put all the money there, but states administer the program. We have limited ability to control the quality of service that states provide.
And I understand that, and of course, Puerto Rico is not a state, but I am concerned, and there's a great deal of concern about the territories being able to have the resources they need when they need it, and there seems to have been some disparity. And because of that, we're trying to explore what we can do to eliminate that problem recurring every time there's a disaster, which may require resources that exceed whatever the block grant cap is. My time for this round is expired. Ms. Lee, do you have additional questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Continuing with our discussion on SNAP, as you know, low-cost food plan is not currently used in SNAP, but many experts agree that the thrifty food plan is outdated and does not accurately reflect the cost or amount of food that needs to be consumed every day. I believe we asked you for a report on low-cost food in helping to determine SNAP allotments per person. It was about a year ago that we asked for that report. Do you have an update on that report, Mr. Secretary? I think it's extremely important that we know where this is.
I'm sorry, ma'am, if we have not reported. I don't have anything personally this morning, but I'll go back and look at that request and see. But we, that's obviously something we need to work together on to determine what levels that you authorize over food availability under SNAP. But if we haven't done that, I'll certainly inquire and find out why.
Thank you. Do you know when we should expect at least a response on when we would get this report?
Well, you should have received a response 8 months ago, but I'll have to find out where it is in order to answer your question, but we'll be back with you directly on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. And the other issue, of course, is the rule that, you know, in terms of the work requirement rule. Have you thought about considering delaying this rule while COVID-19 remains a serious public health threat? This is very serious, and I've mentioned this before, how opposed many of us are to this. Really, it's a cruel rule of taking food out of the mouths of hungry individuals. And now with the public health emergency added to this, why can't we just postpone or delay this until at least this critical moment is over?
Ma'am, what we're trying to do is enforce the rule as it was intentionally, or the law as it was intended. The 120 days, as you know, in that way. You give states the authority over 12% of a population, no questions asked, in order to do that. Our goal, as I mentioned earlier, going to the Baltimore to see a job training center, is we believe the ultimate best thing for these folks are to help them to get a job of a livable wage they can provide for their families. We looked at delaying, And frankly, as I mentioned earlier, the good cause ability that states have if there are extenuating circumstances of disease or health or others, they are excused from that work requirement based on their state's determination.
But in addition to states, just the rule in general, Mr. Secretary, so many people, I think 60 or 70% of individuals who are working are utilizing SNAP benefits because wages are so low. And until we raise the minimum wage, until we make sure that everyone has a living wage that they can afford to feed their families, how can we do this? Because people are working.
And if they make wages that qualify them, they're still eligible for SNAP, and we continue to do that.
But the rule will not allow for that. It's a rule that would...
The rule simply goes back to the 96 law that says, the population we're talking about, able-bodied adults without dependents. Those are the people that really don't have children to look after, don't have disabilities, and really not even the elderly. The elderly was qualified from 18 to 49 years old. So if you're 50 and above, that doesn't apply to you in that population. We're trying to provide those folks, and obviously President Clinton and others had quotes about the goal was to move people into sustainable lifestyles, not permanent dependence.
I agree with that goal. However, people are trying to find work, and through no fault of their own, they can't find work. A lot of our job training programs have been cut back. I'm very concerned by this. I'm a former SNAP recipient, food stamp recipient myself, and believe you me, I wouldn't be here today had these requirements been in place. And again, I didn't agree with that Clinton welfare reform law, and it has really damaged the lives of so many women, especially with children. They couldn't finish their college education because of the work requirements. And so now, with the economy the way it is, whether there's a public health emergency or not, people are really, especially in Black and Latino communities, are trying to find work that pay decent wages. They can't find it.
Ma'am, if they can't find work in an economy of 3.5% unemployment, I'm not sure when they can.
Mr. Secretary, when you look at it may be 3.5% for the general population, but in communities of colors, it's a lot higher. It's twice that.
And we are continuing to issue waivers. We've issued, I think, 80-something waivers for labor market areas under these new rules in 18 different states where there are pockets of unemployment issues.
Okay, my time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. I have one other area of inquiry, Mr. Secretary, and I think we will be about ready to close out. It has to do with the swine inspection rule. We currently await the Inspector General's report on worker safety data that was used in developing the swine rule. And when the rule was proposed, USDA claimed that its data showed a likely reduction in worker injury rates for those plants that chose to opt into the new system. Experts have warned that there are significant limitations in the data that was used by FSIS to draw its conclusion. They go on to conclude that, quote, it's impossible for FSIS to draw any statistically valid conclusion about worker injury rate differences in the HAC inspection model program versus the traditional plants. Can you tell us how many establishments have or are expected to opt in, and approximately what % of the pork production would they represent? And the Inspector General, of course, will soon be completing her report on the data and the other information used to draft the rule. If the report found flaws in the FSIS analysis, will the department stop implementation while you address any of the findings that she yields?
Mr. Chairman, yes, this was decided to go forward based on 20 years of pilot projects, as you may remember, in 5 establishments that account for 15% of the processed pork in the United States. This has been tried for 20 years there. The data that we have there in those establishments are the foundation for the data that we provided in that way, which a 20-year pilot project is a pretty long time to evaluate. That was the basis that we felt comfortable moving forward on the swine modernization program that way. Obviously, if there are legitimate factual data that we would already be aware of it. If someone can point us something to accurate numbers that we're not aware of, we'd certainly reconsider. Our goal is not to hurt people.
Right. So the answer is yes, if the Inspector General comes up with data that is inconsistent, does not statistically support the implementation of the rule, that you will reconsider it. I guess that's the answer based on what you just said.
Yes, if it's valid, irrefutable evidence that's real numbers, certainly.
Because in all candor, these recommendations have been made by various administrations of both parties. So it's not just this administration that has made those recommendations. The industry has been seeking it for a while. And our concern is we just want to make sure that worker safety is protected. The health, safety, and welfare of the workers and of the public are our paramount concern, and that's the reason that I'm asking, and I hope that you would reconsider if, in fact, the Inspector General's report yields statistically significant problems.
We share your concern on worker safety and consumer safety, and the answer would be yes if we're determined otherwise.
Ms. Lee?
Very quickly. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Mr. Secretary, let me just ask you about the Wic Program, which serves, 6 million low-income women and young children to help ensure that they receive a healthy and appropriate diet at a critical time that's crucial for children's development. So I'm sure you agree with this goal of Wic, right, Mr.
Yes,
Secretary?
absolutely.
You agree with it? And so I look at the budget, though, and I see the request of $5.5 billion, which is a level that's $550 million of last year's level. And I'm wondering how that was calculated. I'm really puzzled about this because the request, as I understand it, is based on assumptions of the Nutrition Services Administration's cost, and that level that you assume for the average monthly recipient is $22.44 for fiscal 2021. And so I'm trying to figure out what the cost was for last year, but why would you support this huge, and this is a big cut, $550 million less when the need is even greater?
Ms. Lee, as you know, the WIC program is a whosoever will may come, and they're going to be served in that regard. These numbers, we believe, fully support the amount of people that will show up. We don't know. We've had lower birth rates. We've had children who are later in life. What we also see is a hesitancy after the free formula cuts off after a year. People are eligible for 2 more years, but they don't continue in that regard. We don't know why there's been a lower utilization, maybe economic issues and others, but these numbers fully support. There's also a reserve. If more people came, there's a reserve there that we're going to serve every person that shows up for WIC services.
But it's my understanding that the level last time was $25.85 per recipient per month. Now this budget, if our calculations are correct, is $22.44. So that's reducing the amount per participant, regardless of how many there are.
I can't speak to that unless it assumes lower number of people wanting to be served. It doesn't make any sense that the per person cost, I think that's some math that extrapolates the total. They're assuming the same number of people show up. The trend line indicates that we don't expect that to happen.
Yeah, and I'd like to see your trend lines and the basis for this, because from what I know, and this is just anecdotally, the need is increasing, especially in communities where you have high rates of poverty and where you have many low-income women and women of color who need WIC.
Would you mind if our budget analyst gives you the numbers here? It looks like she has some numbers there that support that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So for WIC, the average per person monthly food benefit is actually increasing between 2020 and 2021. So it goes from $41.14 to $41.91. And as the Secretary mentioned, it really is the average participation that is decreasing for WIC. So for WIC per month, the 2020 budget assumed 6.4 million participants, where it decreases by 200 billion, so it goes down to 6.2 million, and for all the reasons that the Secretary already cited, lower birth rate being the major factor.
Yeah, no, I'd like to drill down a little bit, because I chair the Task Force on Poverty and Opportunity, and this is one program that has been identified as a strategy to lift families out of poverty. And to see it being cut like this tells me we're going in the wrong direction, but I'd like to see how you came up with these numbers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're all in for WIC, and whosoever comes gets served.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary.
All right, Ms. Lee, Mr. Secretary, Dr. Johansson, and Ms. Navarro, thank you for being here today. We look forward to working with you as we continue the FY21 appropriations process, and we'll be sending a few additional questions for the record, and we ask that you get your responses to us by the deadline that's set by the subcommittee. Again, I thank you for your cooperation and for the job that you do. We share the goal of making sure that we continue to produce the highest quality, the safest, the most abundant, and the most economical food and fiber and fuel anywhere in the industrialized world. And we truly want to do all that we can in the legislative branch to help you to do right and to feed everyone.
Thank you,
With
Mr.
that,
Chairman.
The subcommittee is adjourned.